I'm going to tell you something that goes against everything you were taught as a decent human being, and it's going to make you deeply uncomfortable. But if you're serious about surviving a real collapse scenario, you need to hear this. Your empathy, that fundamental quality that makes you a good person, that instinct to help someone in distress, is going to get you killed. And I don't mean that as hyperbole or clickbait. I mean that statistically, historically, across every major societal breakdown in modern history, the people who died in the first 30 days weren't the unprepared masses. They were prepared individuals who made one catastrophic mistake. They opened their door to help someone who seemed like they desperately needed it. So what we're going to do in the next 12 minutes is examine exactly why empathy becomes a tactical vulnerability during collapse, how predators deliberately weaponize your compassion, and most importantly, how you maintain your humanity without committing suicide by kindness. Let me start with a case study that illustrates this with devastating clarity. Because this isn't theoretical. During the Bosnian War in the 1990s, Sarajevo was under siege for nearly 4 years, and what emerged from survivor accounts is a pattern so consistent that military analysts now teach it as doctrine. In the early weeks of the siege, before people understood the new rules, there was a specific type of person who died first. Not the elderly, not the sick, not even the combatants, it was the helpers, people who had stockpiled supplies, who had defensible positions, who had done everything right in terms of preparation, but who couldn't ignore the sound of someone crying for help outside their building. Predatory groups figured out within days that the easiest way to gain access to a fortified position wasn't to breach it by force. It was to use what they called bait. They would send someone, often a woman or a child, to approach a building and cry out that they were injured, that they needed shelter, that armed men were chasing them. And here's the part that should terrify you: it worked, repeatedly. Even after people knew it was a tactic, it still worked. Because the human empathy response is not something you can simply turn off through intellectual knowledge. Your brain's empathy system evolved over millions of years in small tribal groups, where helping someone in distress made evolutionary sense. If someone in your tribe of 30 people was injured or threatened, helping them improved the survival odds of the group, which improved your own survival odds. Your ancestors who responded to distress signals with immediate helping behavior were more successful at passing on their genes than the ones who didn't. So you inherited a nervous system that's hardwired to respond to specific triggers: crying, especially child crying, visible injury, expressions of fear and pain, pleas for help. When you encounter these triggers, your amygdala, the ancient emotional center of your brain, initiates a cascade of responses before your prefrontal cortex, the rational decision-making part, even has time to evaluate the situation. Your heart rate increases. You get a shot of adrenaline. You experience what psychologists call empathic distress, which is the uncomfortable feeling that you need to do something to alleviate the suffering you're witnessing. And here's the critical vulnerability. This response happens in milliseconds, while rational threat assessment takes seconds to minutes. In a survival scenario, that gap between emotional response and rational analysis is where you die. Now, I need to be very clear about something before we go further, because I can already hear the objections forming in your head. I'm not telling you to become a sociopath. I am not saying that empathy is bad, or that you should eliminate compassion from your character. What I'm telling you is that in a collapse scenario, your empathy becomes the primary attack vector that predators use to exploit you. And if you don't understand how this exploitation works at a mechanical level, you will fall for it. The goal is not to stop being human. The goal is to create a circuit breaker between the emotional response and the behavioral response, so that you can feel empathy without immediately acting on it in ways that compromise your security. This is the distinction that separates long-term survivors from casualties in every collapse scenario throughout history. Let's break down exactly how the empathy trap works as a deliberate tactic, because once you understand the mechanism, it becomes easier to recognize in real time. Stage 1 is what security professionals call distress signal amplification. The person approaching your location isn't just asking for help. They're maximizing every signal that triggers your empathy response. If it's a woman, she might be carrying a child or claiming to be pregnant. If it's a man, he might be visibly injured with blood on his clothing. They're crying, But not just crying, they're using the specific kind of sobbing that sounds like someone who's reached the absolute end of their resources. They're using body language that communicates vulnerability, hands visible, stumbling gait, non-threatening posture. And they're calling out specific details that make their story feel real and urgent. Please, they killed my husband. My daughter needs insulin. We haven't eaten in 3 days. I can hear them coming. Every element is designed to override your threat assessment protocols and trigger an immediate helping response. Stage 2 is false time pressure, and this is critical because it's designed to prevent you from thinking. They create the impression that if you don't act right now in this moment, someone is going to die and it will be your fault. They're right behind me. We have maybe 2 minutes, please. If you don't let us in, they're going to find us. This exploits something called the Identifiable Victim Effect, which is well documented in behavioral psychology. When you're presented with a specific person in immediate danger, your brain prioritizes saving that individual over abstract statistical risk assessment. If I tell you that opening your door has a 30% chance of compromising your security and getting you killed, that's an abstract statistic that your emotional brain largely ignores. But if there's a crying child 10 feet away saying they're going to die if you don't help, your emotional brain treats that as a certainty that demands immediate action. The time pressure prevents you from asking the questions you should be asking. Why did you come to my house specifically? How do you know I'm here? Why aren't you seeking help from authorities or going to an official shelter? The answers to those questions would reveal the setup, which is exactly why they don't give you time to ask them. Stage 3 is what I call moral obligation framing, and it's devastatingly effective because it weaponizes your own values against you. They're not just asking for help. They're framing the situation in a way that makes refusal feel like a moral failure. I know you have supplies in there. I've seen your generator running. You're the only one who can save us. What kind of person would let a child die when they could help? This creates what psychologists call cognitive dissonance, which is the painful mental state you experience when your actions don't align with your self-image. You think of yourself as a good person, as someone who helps others, as someone with strong moral values. Refusing to help someone who's begging for their life creates massive cognitive dissonance, and your brain is highly motivated to resolve that dissonance by acting in a way that aligns with your self-image, which means opening the door. The manipulator isn't just asking for help. They're challenging your identity as a moral person, and most people will compromise their security rather than experience the psychological pain of seeing themselves as someone who let another human being die. If this video just fundamentally changed how you think about survival and empathy, I need you to do something right now. Smash that like button, because this is the kind of content YouTube's algorithm doesn't naturally promote. It's uncomfortable, it challenges people, and it needs to reach the people who are still operating under peacetime assumptions that will get them killed when things fall apart. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit subscribe and turn on all notifications because we're not done. This channel isn't about hoarding canned food and buying the latest tactical gear. We're going deep into the psychology, the behavioral science, the uncomfortable truths that determine who actually survives and who becomes a statistic. This is survival intelligence that could save your life, and most people will never hear it because it makes them uncomfortable. Drop a comment right now and tell me, could you actually turn someone away if they were begging for help? Be honest with yourself, because that moment of hesitation, that internal conflict you're feeling just thinking about it, that's exactly what predators are counting on. And if you've got a story about a time when your empathy almost got you into serious trouble, share it. Your experience might be the wake-up call someone else needs. Here's what's coming next. I'm breaking down the exact timeline of psychological breakdown during collapse, week by week, showing you when normal people become dangerous, when desperation turns into predation, and the specific behavioral markers that tell you someone has crossed that line. You're going to want to see that before you need it. One more thing. If you found value in this, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with your family, your survival group, the people you're planning to ride this out with. Because the weakest link in your security isn't your fence or your locks. It's the person in your group who hasn't internalized these lessons and opens the door at the wrong moment. Get everyone on the same page now, while it's still just information and not a life or death decision in real time. Remember, survival isn't about becoming a monster. It's about understanding the difference between genuine help and tactical suicide. Stay sharp, stay human, but stay alive. I'll see you in the next one.